Hello, everyone. Welcome to Using Visual Supports to Facilitate Social Emotional Learning for Autistic Individuals. My name is Enid Hurtado-Stremming, and I am a school field training coordinator with the Kentucky Autism Training Center. The Kentucky Autism Training Center is a state-funded agency in the state of Kentucky, obviously, that is responsible for providing resources to schools, like which my position is involved in, the community, families, to support individuals with autism from 0 to 99. So this information comes from my own personal experience working with individuals in the school. My background is as a special education teacher, um, and how important it is to have social emotional lessons, especially for our autistic friends. This presentation is focused on parents and caregivers. So I will provide information today, not only to help you understand what social emotional learning is all about, because until recently, it has really been focused on the resources have been focused for individuals who work in the schools. But as we know with everything in education, whatever is taught in the schools also needs to be taught at home and practiced at home, and for the students to really understand and be able to generalize the information. So, but social emotional learning is relatively new, at least the structured part of it in the schools and teaching it in the schools, and not all the schools have it yet. So we will define what it is, look at different resources, talk about how you can learn more about it, and of course, the most important, why it is almost a necessity for autistic individuals to be successful in being able to relate to others uh, and being successful in different contexts and environments and settings. Okay, with that said, that's a little abstract. Let's get started. All right, so today we will talk about first autism, just to make sure we're all on the same page, because understanding the medical diagnosis of autism, also what research has shown, um, the challenges that individuals with autism may have when it comes to learning, and the strengths that they have, will really influence the rest of this presentation and understand why SEL is important, how it could be beneficial, and what kind of tools you can use to be able to support learning of SEL. Then, of course, the next thing we will do is learn about SEL. Just, all these are just little nutshells of it. I will provide resources so you can dive more into detail if you'd like to, but I just wanted to make sure that we all knew what we were talking about, so that no matter what level you come in on, you're taking away information that will be helpful to you. Number two, we're going to talk about visual supports. I think at some level, we all know what visual supports are, but I'm just going to make sure we're, again, just on the same page when it comes to the visual supports that will be the most beneficial for supporting SEL learning. And then, of course, talking about SEL specific visual supports, and then talking about the implementation of visual supports, because that is the main reason why visual supports are effective or ineffective for teaching and for the students learning the information. And then at the end, there will be more resources for you to access for all the different pieces of information that we learn in this session. All right, the first thing I'm going to start off with, and you may want to, since I know you're watching this as a recorded session, I'd like for you to pause this just so that you can access this resource folder. This is a live resource folder on a Google Drive, so you will have to have a Google account. I think at this point, a lot of people have Gmail accounts for your email. If you don't, it's free. You can just create one so that you can access these resources. And then you're going to find that a lot of other agencies, websites will also use this too. So, and it's free, and it's a great way to just save your resources in one spot. So you can either use the QR code if you know how to use that on your phone or on another device, or type in this URL, which is called a bit.ly, because it's just a shortened version of the long URL address that we have on websites, and just type that into your computer. So you can write that down, take a picture, whatever it is that you need to do. And if this is sounding challenging for you, I am sure that there is somebody in your household that is really good with computers and devices and doing all this stuff, and they can help you access the information in this resource folder. Okay, and with that said, I'm going to move on. And if you need a little bit more time, feel free to pause this and then return to the video. All right, so how is SEL tied to autism? All right, so let's talk a little bit about autism spectrum disorder, ASD, medical diagnosis. In that folder that I just introduced to you, there is a handout with the full diagnostic criteria. I just took out parts of it that are specifically related to the SEL topic, social emotional topic. Sure, for many of you, you already know this by heart. But again, remember, I'm just going over this very quickly so that we can all be on the same page for the rest of the presentation. All right, so as of the DSM-5, and this is similar in the next version, DSM-7, that just came out this year. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about when I say DSM-5 or 7, the DSM is a book or probably an online publication now, that the psychology world uses. And this is how ASD or autism is diagnosed. Okay, so it has to meet these criteria. And so according to the 5, which again is very similar to even the most recent, there's only, I think, a couple words that were changed, like and or, in the sense of what the characteristics are. So the wording of the actual characteristics are the same. You can see that, but there are persistent deficits in social communication, social interaction across multiple contexts. Okay, they may have a challenge with reciprocity, right? Back and forth conversation, even exchange of looks, those visual cues that we have during conversations to know how a person's feeling. Maybe it's a joke, ask that intonation for a question or something that expresses emotion. Remember, it's a spectrum, so the person that you've come with in mind may be somewhere where they either don't have this at all, or they're pretty good at this. They struggle in some, but who doesn't, right? In some instances, but who doesn't? So again, remember all these characteristics, individuals can have a deficit in it to varying degrees. They don't really get that back and forth conversation. They don't know how to, talk about a shared interest or emotions. And then the failure to initiate or respond to social interaction, not knowing that somebody's trying to start a conversation or be able to initiate a conversation themselves. So that's something that's going to be part of the SEL can help teach. Okay. Have deficits in nonverbal communication behavior. So there's that nonverbal behaviors, those the body motions that actually communicate when you're talking to another person, whether that's eye contact, the person's mad, scared, happy. They don't really understand that, or they don't express that themselves. And again, remember, varying degrees. Some of you will have kids that are just fine with that, or have come a long way because of early intervention. They've learned how to learn these skills, basically. And then deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships, right? Being able to generalize skills, be able to move between contexts, and making friends, or even being interested in peers, which we know at this point that it's not that they lack of interest in peers, it's just that they don't know how to approach, initiate, or how to respond to other peers. And again, you're going to see that SEL, the structured SEL, really provides instruction on how to teach these skills to everyone. It's not just for students with autism, it's everyone. So this is a really great program to have in the classroom and to practice at home. All right, we also know, oh, this is the spectrum part. So we also know, as far as the medical model, which is what we've been looking at, that, the diagnosis will come with a level 1, level 2, or level 3, basically designating how much support the student needs to be able to learn the skills that they need to be successful in, for lack of a better word, life, to be able to be successful in a classroom, in a community, in the family, right, in different contexts. So, and you probably are very familiar with this because this is what qualifies your, I'm going to say student because I'm coming from a teacher's point of view, but your child with the type of support that they need for their services. All right. This is information that you may not be as familiar with. And I want to let you know too that in the resource folder, you will find a PDF, so a copy of this presentation. Okay, so don't feel like you need to write down all these notes at this point, because this may be some new information for you. You will have access to a copy of this presentation. All right, so TEACH is and you can see at the bottom right corner, there's the acronym, is a program out of UNC Chapel Hill, okay, where they have been focused on research and discovering the best ways to teach students with autism. Okay, so it is very school-based, but in that, right, you as caregivers and parents and guardians are also teachers in a way, right? You're teaching them how to be the most successful at home with you and the people that they interact with every day. So there are programs or information through Teach. And some of you may be familiar with the more local ones that you access. Vanderbilt in Tennessee, that university also has a great resource. And I would look at your local universities because there's a lot more universities getting involved in autism research and resources for the family, and finding out what's best and how to, really breaking it down in the steps and even resources and classes, even online or in person. So definitely check that out. Well, with this TEACH program that I've been talking about, they discovered that, through working with many individuals with autism throughout the years, that the learning styles of individuals are different because in the following areas that they found were impacting their way of learning in the classroom and life. Okay, so they may have some challenges or just differences with auditory processing, implicit learning, attention, sensory processing, multiple perspectives, and executive functioning. Now, we're not going to go over all of those today, okay? We're just going to really quickly summarize the implicit learning and the multiple perspectives. And I think multiple perspectives more people are familiar with, but again, we're just going to go over this very briefly just to make sure we're all on the same page so it makes sense when we talk about what social emotional learning curriculum is and learning and why it's beneficial. Okay, so implicit learning refers to the learning that goes on really between 0 and 3. So when they're at home, when they're very small, and it's all those lessons that neurotypical kids, and neurotypical is just a word to say that the normal developing brain, right, which is what the diagnosis is being compared to. So what typical children may learn between 0 and 3, and that what individuals with autism may not learn, and that affects their understanding and ability to learn when they start in preschool, and get into those ages of 3, 4, and 5. So they may not have either the skills, so they may be missing the skills, or they have different skills because they've learned differently during those years. Okay. And so so these are all lessons that are not, there's no lesson plan. There's no us reinforcing for the student learning. You're not consciously thinking, okay, I'm going to teach them this skill today. Like, for example, tying shoes, right? That's a skill that is taught explicitly. You have to model how to tie shoes. You teach them hand over hand. You're verbally saying, good job, that's right, whatever it is, whether you have the Velcro shoes or the actual shoelaces. That would be a skill that needs explicit teaching, and the child needs to be explicitly learn it. The implicit, the automatic, are all usually a lot of the social skills that babies, that toddlers learn. For example, making eye contact with the parent, smiling when the parent smiles at them, when the parent's mad, making mad face. The child also gets sad or gets a little bit nervous. When you tell the child to come here and your hands are moving, you have a smile on your face and you're waving your hand, the child knows, what that means. So all of those where you're not teaching it, like I said, with modeling and hand over hand and telling good job or anything like that, it's just things that are part of everyday life. So, individuals with autism, the way their brain develops when they're young does not really set them up to learn those implicit lessons, which also causes some trouble with generalization of the skills that they have when they learn through explicit learning, when they're in the home and they learn that the parents do certain things and the little sibling does another thing, and then they can do it well in the home, say for example sitting at a table and eating with a spoon or a fork. Okay, then when they go to school and they're asked to do the same thing in the cafeteria, they can't do it. They have no idea. In fact, they get really upset, right? That's the challenging part of their generalization. They don't they don't generalize the skills that they have at home, specifically when they're young, when they first go to school, preschool, since that's their first school setting. They don't always generalize to that new environment because nothing looks the same. It's not the same people, not the same voices. Again, some kids have a harder time, some kids have a better time. Okay. And then the other thing is specific memory is stronger than the integration idea. So they tend to focus on one specific thing. And you guys, and all of you know what I'm talking about, right? They could talk about the same thing over and over again. So they really focus on things that really mean a lot to them instead of looking at something and looking at the big picture. Again, if you have a young child, that's pretty general, that's pretty typical, developmentally typical for that. But older kids, you start to see that more and more because kids that have the set of skills that allows them to see the big picture will be able to do that, where again it needs to be taught explicitly for kids with autism, students with autism. All right, so here's an example. You see this picture? Okay, I usually ask, what do you see? A lot of people say chaos, but rabbits at a camp, a big family reunion. So again, a lot of us will see the big picture, and don't worry about the the dialogue bubbles that you see there. All right. Well, a child with autism, and then they do give something similar to during the diagnostic test for kids that are around 8 years old. They'll say, oh, I see bunnies on a canoe. And if you ask like, oh, well, what else do you say? I see that too. You're right, at the bottom right corner. What else do you say? Well, the reason why a child may say just focus on the canoe. They may tell you again, I see, buddies on a canoe. Is that again, they're able to focus very specifically, and it probably means something to them. So for example, the child who said that may have just gone canoeing or goes canoeing all the time with certain family members or went to camp. And that was a really fun experience for them. They really love canoeing. And so they will focus in on the areas of a picture like this that they can relate to, that is important to them. Okay. And so they'll tell you that there's bunnies, right? And that's going to be the story of this picture, that their bunnies went canoeing, which we know there's a lot more going on, and there's a lot more in the big picture of this specific picture that may be important to say. For example, if this was in a story, or if they were asked to talk about this picture, right? So that is an example of the specific memory versus big picture memory, or focusing on specific ideas versus big picture ideas. Okay, the multiple perspectives, I think this is a little bit probably more well known. So individuals with autism may have some challenges with joint attention. So that is knowing that others have different beliefs, views, or values and experiences. So for example, a child who doesn't understand that not everybody experienced the same thing this weekend. Or like in the last picture, that not everybody knows what it's like to be in a canoe. They think that everybody experiences life the same way that they do. Understanding responding to others' beliefs, desires, intentions, and emotions, also known as theory of mind. So that's usually one that most people are familiar with. So just not understanding, again, that not only do they have that other people have different beliefs, but knowing how to respond to it. Maybe not really responding nicely, right? Because they just don't get it. And multitasking. Again, this is on a spectrum, so looking and listening. So some self-advocates, which are older adults with autism, that have shared with us, like shared with the general public, what it's like to have autism. Some of them say it's very challenging. So they can either look at a person, but they won't be able to listen to them because they're so distracted by looking at their face or their clothes, or what's in front of them. Or they can look down and then they can listen to the person and be able to focus on what they're saying. So that's just an example. I'm not generalizing that. I'm just saying that's an example of the multitasking possible challenges with it. Now, this is a multiple perspectives assessment test, again, that they give to 8-year-olds. So if you have a younger child, they may respond the same way as the autistic child. But if you look at this comic, okay, where will Sally look for her ball? Okay, that's the last one. All right, so most of us would probably say that she will look in the basket because that's where she thought she left the ball. Where a child with autism may say she'll look in the box because he or she does not realize that Sally doesn't know that Anne put the ball in the box. They don't understand that what they know, Sally doesn't know, because they know it because they're reading the comic, right? So Sally should know it. So that kind of gives you some perspective, which you can imagine if you apply that to social interactions, can be the cause of a lot of misunderstanding, right? A lot of miscommunicating, not knowing what to say, not understanding why people are saying certain things to them. So now let's see what SEL is and how the SEL can benefit those deficits, no matter if they're small or very pronounced. Okay, so let's talk about SEL. Again, you have this PDF, more new information. You have this PDF in your resource folder. And if you click on this picture, it will take you to the website, the CASEL website, where I got this information from. And this is the official website where a lot of the curriculum comes from for social emotional learning. Okay, so I will start referring to the CASEL, CASEL website. Okay, so social emotional learning. Oh, and again, here's another link. This is a link to a video that will also explain this. So if learning through videos is more your way of learning, then when you access the PDF later on, just click on that video, and this will explain this in a video as well. Okay, basically it breaks it down to 5 different categories, SEL. It teaches self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. Sounds pretty good, right? Sounds like I think that there's some people in my life that I think I could learn that could benefit from this. I think I could benefit in some of these categories. So you can imagine if our children start learning this from very young, right? That would not only help with those deficits that we just mentioned, but if everybody in the classes are learning them, then this may help too. Okay, but it should just not be taught at school, right? And I know that there's probably some of you have children in schools right now that are teaching this, and you may get that SEL or social emotional learning, update or newsletters or handouts. So this is just to help you understand what it is that they're talking about, okay, and how you can do this at home too. All right. Okay. So what characteristics of autism would make learning SEL skills challenging? So we kind of talked about a little bit, right? Their ability to not know how to respond, not being aware that the way that they view things or their experiences are different from others, not knowing how to respond, the words to use. So there's a lot of different things. So let's talk a little bit more, and we will watch some videos on it as well. So why is this important to families? Well, and there's a woman that I took this from an article in Edutopia from 2021, and this was actually an article written by a woman who has SEL curriculum. So, and I really like though that reason, not because of that, but she does she does work with a lot of families, a lot of kids. But I really liked the way they said what it said. Social and emotional learning happens everywhere, right? In the classroom, on the bus, at the kitchen table, on the playground, at neighborhood barbecues. And families are core, just like they are with a lot of other subjects, to a child's social and emotional development. Supporting social and emotional growth at home impacts not only the children, but the entire family. And you know that for those of you who have some challenging behaviors that you are trying to cope with at home, and it just doesn't have to be the kids with autism, right? Could be the other kids in the family too. When children and their grown-ups have the tools to navigate stressors, challenges, changes, and really big emotions, we build more emotionally resilient families and communities. All right, with that said, let's watch some 2 videos that I'd like to show you. And again, you have these links in your in the PDF. So let's start with this. Oh, no.
School should be.
We will watch that one. This one's an overall one that I really liked.
There's a lot of talk these days about SEL, social emotional learning. But what exactly is it? Social emotional learning is the process of learning social and emotional skills, and it's just as important as learning reading or math. This learning process is most effective when it begins early and continues through high school. Social emotional skills are essential for success in school, work, and life. With SEL, students learn to manage their own emotions and behaviors, have empathy and show care and concern for others, solve problems effectively, make responsible decisions, and maintain healthy relationships. Students learn to recognize what's happening inside them and to be aware of their emotions, which helps them deal with strong emotions and impulsive behaviors. It helps them stop, take a breath, and think about a situation before acting. Students learn to identify others' emotions and perspectives, which helps them empathize and show compassion, no matter who they are or what their background is. It's not difficult to imagine how this is important in the classroom and in life. Students learn to solve problems in peaceful ways and communicate assertively about what they need or want. This helps them get along with other students and get the help they need from adults. When students learn to make responsible decisions about their lives and their future, things can turn out better. Research shows social-emotional learning makes a difference. Students who participate in SEL do better academically, have improved attitudes and behaviors, and act in delinquent or disruptive ways less often. In the United States, students with strong social-emotional competence are twice as likely to earn a college degree and nearly 50% more likely to graduate from high school and have a full-time job by age 25. Just as important, students who are socially and emotionally competent have more friends. This means they're more likely to feel connected to school and do well, and less likely to be left out or bullied. Simply put, by participating in social-emotional learning, students learn the skills to succeed in every facet of school and the rest of their lives.
Okay, so you can see that, we have students who that's their identified deficits to varying degrees, but it benefits all students. So if you have a curriculum going on in your student's classroom, you're very lucky. And if you don't, then the CASEL organization has ways for you to talk about it with the teachers. But here's a video of some some kids, and that was created by the organization that regulates the curriculum. Okay, I should say regulates. That really is responsible for getting this out and about and into schools, and is a nonprofit that gets funding from the government. Okay.
School should be where everyone feels comfortable and everyone should know that everyone's unique and you don't have to be perfect.
SEL is really about the holistic development of young people.
Social emotional learning to me provides students with purpose. SEL was a great foundation and catalyst for me. It taught me to value education and value human connection.
Social and emotional learning is the process by which children grow and develop their emotional lives and relationships.
Well, social emotional learning gives the space where people can actually look at students as more than just numbers on a standardized test. We give people the space to explore who they are as people, to look at their identity, to recognize how important relationships are, and what it means to be a successful human, not just a successful student.
In my classroom, they are able to share the things that are personal to them. They're able to celebrate one another's differences. They're inclusive of each other despite what race, socioeconomic, or gender they're from.
SEL promotes academic achievement in effective ways, raising test scores 11 percentile points. It reduces anxiety and distress as well. So it improves pro-social behavior and how kids get along and attend in the classroom.
SEL is rocket fuel. It is the thing that can actually accelerate the advancement of our society.
When I think about a healthy environment for my daughter, I'm looking at, are those teachers engaged? Are they showing her to be an empathetic person? When teachers are engaged and they have that engagement with the students are going to excel.
The educators, the families, the community members, and the students agree that this is important.
How do we make sure that kids don't just get a segment of their life where social and emotional learning is important, but they're getting that in all parts of their life?
Right now, we have an untapped pool of talent. And so the idea is to leverage SEL in order to help young people realize those talents and thereby help the broader society and, in fact, the world.
We really can create schools that inspire, that help students find their sense of self, that help students find their sense of purpose, to learn how to relate to one another, and to better prepare kids for wherever they choose to go in life.
Well, SEL taught you to step up when you need to, but also step back when you had to. So you were creating space for yourself, but also making space for others.
Now we open a new chapter, and the new chapter is inviting educators, families, young people, scholars, policymakers, inviting the whole country into the dialogue about the kind of social and emotional development we want to promote for all of our children in the future.
Okay, so hopefully between those two explanations that helped you understand what social emotional learning is. And if you would like more resources, there's a resource link right here on this slide. Again, all these links that you see are live on in your PDF in the resource folder. All right, so let's talk about the second part of our presentation, and that's visual supports. So at Kentucky Autism Training Center, we base all of our work, okay, on this report, the NAECP Evidence-Based Research Report, which is a report that comes out every 4 years and identifies the most effective strategies or evidence-based or practices. They're also strategies for teaching students or individuals with autism, okay? And so, not surprisingly, visual supports is one of those. But as you look at the list, there's 28 right now, and another report should be coming out within the next year. But 28 is where we're at. And you can see some that are just part of good teaching in general, right? Reinforcement, prompting, modeling. I've even mentioned those already today. You see some, you may know what task analysis is, video modeling, peer-mediated instruction. There's parent-implemented intervention. So I did put this report in your folder. Okay, so you will find this report in your folder. It's pretty user-friendly in the sense that it's easy to read. It doesn't get too hung up in the research part, although it will identify because the criteria is quite strict. In fact, we love using this report with parents because, you know, there's a lot of information out there that may not be evidence-based to really be effective and may cost a lot of money. So we always suggest that you look at this list to make sure that if that strategy is on there, because some of these are categories. So if you look more into it, you may see that strategy underneath the category of the practice. Like AAC, that second one, that includes a lot of our, you know, devices, PECs, if any of you have students who are nonverbal or don't have functional speech. So, you know, there may be some other evidence-based practices that are under some of these. So I would just really recommend that you look at this report, look at the website you'll see the website in there. It's all free. It was actually initiated by parents. This report a long time ago, about 25 years ago, actually. Now it's probably about 30 something years ago. So really it's just for you to know what has been found effective. So you know what to do with your individuals. Visual supports. We live in a very visual society, right? We all use visual supports. Think of our phones, whether you have an iPhone or not. Think of the restroom signs, calendars, if you use calendars. I mean, all the road signs, even when we cook recipes, whether it's in a cookbook or on the back of a box, right? We usually have pictures or little things letting us know what to do. So use that strength to be able to teach the skills that individuals with autism medically have been identified as not having or having a challenging time with, and that there's these curriculums out there to help them teach that. Okay. Oh, here's 9 reasons to use visuals, but I think we all got it. And again, you don't use visuals for everything, and that's what we're going to talk about next. All right, so there's 3 types of visual boundaries that the report identifies, okay, that research identifies. There, and again, these are more like categories because a lot of things can fall into it. Visual boundaries provide information about where an area begins or ends, right? So it may be objects like a bookcase, or you can see they use tape on the floor, rugs, furniture, okay? And so maybe this is talking about personal space, or if there's some places that are off limits at certain times in your house or in different settings, then providing some type of visual boundary and teaching that the individual that we have in mind that is off limits at certain times may help them be able to respect others, individuals, space or areas. Okay. Visual schedules, you're probably very familiar with this one. This is the one that a lot of schools will use with students within it. But again, as mentioned in that other picture, we all use visual schedules, right? Whether it is a calendar working, hanging on the wall, or a to-do list, or a procedural checklist of how to put something together, or the calendar on our phone. So, and again, it's to help predict what is about to happen, what is expected, how to be successful. So a lot of times visual schedules will be used not only for schedules to know what's going on during the day or during an activity, but what are the steps? For example, on the left, calming down, right? What are the steps for calming down? A calm down corner. Some people are familiar with this for their kids in preschool, but you can have this at home too, have a calm down corner, and it can look very age appropriate, right? But just an area where, talk about personal space, where a person can go to help when they have those big emotions or they're feeling very frustrated. What can they do? Go to a place where they can calm down, their steps of what they're supposed to do. And again, it could be simple or complex depending on the schedule. I mean, depending on the person. And then visual cues. Okay, this is a pretty big category. Look at all those. I mean, this could be Post-it notes. This could be signs or labels. So we were talking about personal space earlier. This could be a stop sign, or area is closed to let them know not to go into somebody's room or go into a certain area of the house. And and even if the person knows, like, you're like, oh, they know that. Well, if they keep going into it, they may know that, like, in their brain, but they can't remember that. Okay. And they can't remember whether there's certain times, because it's how their brain works, right? If it's not part of a routine, then if it's random times, that may be a little confusing for them. So just providing that visual cue to help them understand what they're supposed to be doing to be successful may be helpful. Okay. All right, so let's talk. So now that we know those 3 categories: boundaries, schedules, which you saw all the different examples of that, and cues, which I think a lot of us need anyway, but especially for students with autism or autistic individuals. Let's talk about SEL specific ones. Okay. Now in the schools, there are different curriculums, SEL curriculums. Okay. Some of these are called conscious discipline, second step, zones of regulation. So if you're not sure if your child is in school, or they're seeing a mental health practitioner, if they're using any of these programs, I would ask, again, remember I told you at the beginning, all this stuff was really geared towards schools, but as you heard in the video, research is showing that obviously they need these skills outside of the schools and mental health offices, right? So they will be more than happy, I'm sure, to let you know what program they're using and give you information. Ask them for information that would be applicable for the home and community environment. If your student is involved in community programs, because it would be helpful for them too. At the bottom, if your school hasn't, this is just really random information, but if you're a kind of person who would like to help your school or classroom, at least that your child is in, have a program like this. At the bottom, there is the CASEL, the Castle Program Guide. And that, again, remember that that's that organization that kind of really is the foundation for this whole movement. They have a program guide that identifies different programs and kind of describes it and, gives you a good description, and you can share that with your school. They have other stuff too. They have lots of stuff. Okay. So once you know what program they're using, or if they're not using it, don't worry, I have information for you too. If your school or the mental health practice or whatever program your autistic individual is involved in is not using it, we have information for that too. All right. So these programs, if they are using a program, a lot of these programs, because they're for the whole class or for a whole group, are not individualized. So as you probably all know at this point, and if you don't, you will realize this very quickly, that to explicitly teach students with autism, right? Remember, that's like, breaking it down, teaching it, providing verbal prompting, maybe hand over hand prompting, teaching them just like that, tying the shoelaces type of teaching. You'll need some individualized supports, okay, to be able to teach these skills. So this is what we kind of have to ask, like, what visual supports do you use effectively with the individual? Like, what works for them? And you may not know if you don't use it at home already. If you do use them at home, then you do know what kind of visual supports work with your autistic student, or excuse me, autistic child or individual if they're an adult. If you don't, ask the school. They're probably using visual supports. Okay, that is like the number one thing to use with kids with autism, because that is their strength, right? Auditory processing may not be the strong, but their visual understanding, because visual supports make everything concrete. Okay, right? It's a picture. You know what the picture means. And so it makes everything concrete. So ask them. Ask what they're using. And one thing that some people may or may not be using, that I would recommend, especially since you know it best, when you start using visual supports with your autistic child or individual or adult, add their favorite topic or character. If they love certain movies or cartoons or objects that they really like to talk about, add that to the visual support, because that will make it more meaningful to them. Remember, I was talking to you about that implicit learning and explicit learning. They really focus on things that really are meaningful to them. Well, this type of learning, these lessons are not going to be really meaningful to them at first, because they're not really understanding why they need to learn it, right? They may not see that big picture. They don't have any experience with that big picture like we do of why these type of skills are important. So you may want to just, if you can, integrate that character, that topic into it, or at the very least, put a picture of it on the visual support to catch their eye and have them see it. Some strategies that help make it more individualized are comic strip conversations by Carol Great. You can just Google this. There's a lot of examples of this. People have been using it. I love it because you only need to draw stick figures. But again, it's basically like creating comics to understand people's thoughts, what they do. There's a whole code, like color code, like you use conversation bubbles for this, thought bubbles for that, you use certain colors. So I would look into that. Excuse me. Some of your kids may really like it. You can even draw it with them. That's what I loved about it too. Thinking of You, Thinking of Me by Michelle Garcia Winner. This was originally created for middle school and high schoolers that are at a level 1 at that point. Okay, so I just want to put that out there, just because of, like, when you look this up, there are free webinars, as you can see. There's free downloads and everything, and it's really great. Like, you look at it, and again, it's one of the things I think, oh, adults in my life who I think would benefit from from these lessons. But I just wanted to put that out there just so that you know that it's going to be at a little bit higher level of understanding of the middle school and high school. So if you're if you're individuals that in elementary or elementary level material, they respond better to these more abstract ideas. Then thinking of you may not be for you guys. I would stick to Carol Gray. She has other types of strategies too, other than the comic strip conversations, but for this kind of stuff, because you're talking about, you know, relating to others, the comic strip conversations seem to have the best research. Social narratives are also another one. This is another Carol Gray. So the comic strip and the social stories is her evidence-based, because you can write stories around perspective sentences. And she has a lot of followers who have used her social stories, families, parents, caregivers that have used her I should say algorithm, or her equation for creating social stories. They have used it the whole life of their child, even with adults at a time, to help explain abstract relationships, abstract things that happen in life for the child. So I would definitely look into this. Again, you can see this really addresses the multiple perspectives deficit that some autistic individuals may have. So I would look into this. There's also a lot of resources on this for parents. Just Google it. The links here will take you to some examples and some resources, but if you want to look more on your own, I would highly recommend it. This is one of my favorites, and it was specifically created for autistic individuals of all ages at all levels. And it is called the Incredible 5-Point Scale. And again, a lot of information on this on Google. I put a link of this at the end. I would recommend buying the book. This is something that definitely has to be taught explicitly, but it can be used for a lot of different things. It's easy to start to generalize this. And a lot of this has to do with them, the self-awareness part, being able to identify you know, where they're at. Anxiety is a big thing in with autism. So really identifying what level they are on the anxiety scale, and what they can do, like you can see on the last column, what they can do to help them really, you know, become less anxious or calm themselves down or communicate. Okay, it just depends. It's very individualized. You can see others pictures on the left, or you could just be all, you know, just could be a all written. So again, great resource to use at home, to use in the classroom, everywhere. I have only experienced very effective use of this from, even if the child never has seen this in their life, at all levels. Okay. Because it's great, right? Like the child, a lot of times when it comes to these topics right here, a lot of people, I want to say a lot of people, but really autistic individuals don't have the words, right? They don't know what words to use to describe how they're feeling, or their confusion about it, or their lack of knowledge, or or a misunderstanding. So having a visual support like this really helps them be able, if they're not going to be able to say it, they can at least point to it, or at least use this as a cue if it has you know, some phrases for them to be able to use to communicate with other people that, you know, they really want to be successful in this relationship, or, you know, being part of this group, but they don't really know what to say. So again, good stuff. All right. So remember I told you that if you don't have any program to base yourself off, so those resources before that were, again, those were to enhance a program. You could also use it on their own, so you could use it on your own. But there are a lot of resources out there. These examples, some of them came from a website called Pathway to Success. There's a resource for this at the end. So it just depends on what your student or child needs. Self-awareness. So there's a lot of different ideas for self-awareness. Okay. Self-management. There's a lot of ideas around self-management. Here's that cozy corner or calm down corner. I mean, I think I can use this sometimes. I need like a calm down room. But you know what I mean? Like, again, this is not too far away from what, we all need. It's just that a lot of us learn the coping skills little by little or automatically, like you saw, like people don't, we don't necessarily learn it explicitly in life. We just learn it through, natural consequences or but individuals with autism have a hard time with that. Okay. They may not learn it unless it's taught explicitly to them. So these are some of the resources that we can provide, the support we can provide, and tools we can teach them and provide to them so then they can learn these skills. So self-management, relationships, here comes back to comic strip conversations, which I like so much, but there were some other resources on that as well. Social awareness, right? Thinking of you, thinking of me. There you go. If your child's at that level where there's some social awareness, there's just by teaching just the explicit kindness. What does kindness mean? We always see that phrase, be kind. Well, what does that mean? So explicitly teaching some of the examples of kindness that would be related to your home life. So I thought this was a cute, like, whether it's a bingo card or, however you want to provide it, or a checkoff list. And, you would provide some type of reinforcement every time they complete one of those, or if it's a more of a lesson, the thinking of you, thinking of me, kind of cue cards. Decision making, whew, that's a hard one, right? So there's cards, right? Like, scenario cards, and just having discussions around there, helping them understand, and who's going to help them understand better than you, right? And, really talking them through when things do happen at home and out in the community, like, why did that happen? Or why did why did that person react that way? So really, really more consciously talking about those situations and helping them. There's also visual supports. This is called a contingency. So really, like, if you've talked about the same situation over and over again, you may make a visual support to use as a cue. So, and this is really using pictures, right? So this is for maybe a more elementary student, but the idea is the same. You can use at any level. And it's just that what basically what the skill, what happened, what's the scenario, and what happens if, how do you do the right thing and make sure you're happy, and what would be the wrong thing to do that would make you sad or the other person sad. Again, very individualized. And you only use visual supports again with the scenarios that just are not very clear to the individual. They're just not I don't want to say they're not getting it, but in a way they're not understanding it, right? They can't figure out when they're supposed to apply certain skills in certain situations. And so if you can break that down and help them understand what to do during specific situations, like that have that common qualities, that will help them learn, because of obviously practice and getting that positive reaction will help them learn those skills. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the implementation of visual supports. All right, so first, with visual supports, you got to plan them. Okay, I gave you a lot of ideas. So the first information I just talked about what information needs to be bridged. So there's some type of misunderstanding. Is when you start to think visual supports. And I just gave you a great scenario where it's the same thing over and over again. A lot of times in a home, I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters, so I know that a lot of time it's personal space. I think that's why I mentioned that. But it could just be personal space for parents too, if there's just one child. And that's maybe a good place to start, just because it's, it's not always predictable. It's not routine. And by the time that the child is again coming into personal space, after you verbally said not to come in, or you gave the indicator and the child still did it, then it's time to bring in a visual support so that it is very clear. There's nothing abstract about it. There's no challenges to auditory processing. It's permanent. You can put it on your door or whatever the space is, what if there's some type of boundary, right? It also could be cues, what bridge, you're going into a community setting. Maybe it's something, like a little list that you make and you review in the car before you get out of the car to remind the student, what the expectations are or what's going to happen and what they can do to be successful. So again, it's just, helping them to be able to remember what to do to be successful in a social situation where there may be a lot of different emotions, there may be a lot of social things going on, and it may not be clear to them what to do, or especially if they're younger, learning what to do because they haven't really had that experience before, and they haven't showed a lot of success in it in the past. So you choose what format will work best, right? Boundaries, cue, or schedule. Whether it's to be stationary or portable. Is it something that's gonna be on a clipboard? If it's in the house, like on the wall, usually like a schedule, on a lanyard. It might be something that's around your neck. If you're with young kids, that you can carry something they carry around, maybe something in their backpack or their folder. If they carry something around, or in their pocket, you can laminate it. Okay. Choose which visual represents the information. Objects would be for very young kids or people are just starting out with visual supports. Photos are always great, right? I feel like at this point, photos are understood by even babies, because we, again, live in a very visual world. Symbols are a bit abstract, but if they understand it, great. And words, again. And if you're not sure what they understand or like what really jumps out at them, give them a magazine or a book or something that they can look through and see like what they are attracted to. How will the student interact with it? It says create it or write it. I mean, if they're at the level where they can help create it, that's the best, because then they can tell you exactly what they need, right? And you could help them create that. And if they want to put like stickers or a picture of one of their favorite things on there, great. That's great too. Anytime you can individualize it so they'll remember it and they'll want to use it. Or if they write on it, like cross things out, just to make sure, they know that that's over, whatever it is that they need. And then you're going to model and reinforce it. Okay. So you got to plan to use that visual support so that you're modeling to show them how to use it. And then you're reinforcing with, verbal praise, like, great job. I really like the way you used that today. I saw you looking at it. I'm glad you asked me about it, or you went to go get it. And if it's that personal space, remember, we want to celebrate or reinforce approximations. So if they open the door, but then they saw the sign and they close the door back up, that's okay. That's, they're learning. So you can praise them for that. And then of course, if they actually do respect the personal space, then it's a party. But you really want to make it clear to them that them being successful at using the visual support is a great thing. Some people ask, will they have to use these visual supports forever? No, they may not. Some of them, they'll just remember and they'll get it, right? And they'll start to practice that skill, and then it'll generalize, and then they got it. Some things like a schedule, though, we all still use schedules. So there's some things that they will not always use a visual support. So some of these are life skills in a way, right? Like I said, model, prompt, and reinforce. Okay. And some other tips, just remember that these visual supports need to be accessible whenever, and you saw this is a slide from a presentation I did for mental health practitioners. So ignore the clients and practitioners part. Must be accessible, right, for whenever the individual needs it. Needs to be used consistently. So always use it as much as possible. You're going to forget. You got a lot of things on your mind, but just as long as you can use it as much as you can possibly, you're going to spend time either, correcting or being frustrated or realizing that they don't have the skills. So how can you expect them to have the skill? So really, it's going to take a little bit of effort on your part to remember. But if you can stick, where it's really obvious, maybe even create some cue notes, little post-it notes to remember to bring it along if you go out in the community or to use it at home, then it will, I promise you, it will work. It will work. And I think the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory. So we're coming up to the end. Here's some resources. Again, these are all what we've talked about. Just click on the link in your PDF. If you didn't see the PDF of this presentation is in the resource folder. If you didn't get access to the resource folder, it's at the beginning of this presentation. Just go back to the beginning. Here are some resources if you want to learn more about those evidence-based practices and that report that I shared with you. These are websites that you can learn more about it. Ocali is a great one for everything. They're out of Ohio. They have a lot of resources for families. And that's it. So if you would like to get a hold of us, if you're in Kentucky and you'd like to get a hold of us, we do have a website. But in the meantime, which is kentuckyautism.org. But if you could please let me know how I did today in explaining this information. And I believe there's a question on the survey about what else you would like to learn. That would be very beneficial for us. So again, you can pause this, use the QR code, type the bit.ly into your computer, or if you don't know how to do that, ask somebody else and just answer the few questions, and that will really help us in providing future trainings. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you do to provide the best life possible for the individuals that you care for. And we hope that you join us for another training.